facility hummed with alien technology as Captain Jake Morrison walked through the sterile corridors. His boots echoed against the metallic floor, each step bringing him closer to the most dangerous prisoner in the galaxy. The guards at the checkpoint scanned his credentials twice before allowing him passage into the restricted wing. "She hasn't spoken to anyone in 3 months," Lieutenant Ross informed him as they approached the final door. "The interrogation teams have tried everything. Chemical persuasion, neural mapping, even psychic probes. Nothing." Jake nodded, studying the thick reinforced barriers that separated them from their captive. Through the observation window, he could see her, the Vex Queen, ruler of the most feared empire in known space. Her pale blue skin seemed to shimmer under the harsh artificial lights, and her 4 arms remained perfectly still as she sat in meditation. "Leave me alone with her," Jake ordered. Ross hesitated. "Sir, protocol requires." "I know the protocols. I wrote half of them." Jake's voice carried the authority of someone who had spent 15 years fighting the Vex across 12 star systems. "Give me 30 minutes. The lieutenant reluctantly withdrew, sealing the outer chamber. Jake approached the energy barrier that kept the Queen contained. She hadn't moved, her large violet eyes remaining closed, her breathing steady and controlled. "Your Majesty," Jake said quietly. The Queen's eyes snapped open, immediately focusing on him with an intensity that made most beings uncomfortable. She tilted her head slightly, studying his face with what appeared to be confusion. "You may address me as Queen Lyra," she said, her voice carrying the melodic quality typical of her species. "Though I suspect you already know my name, Captain Morrison." Jake wasn't surprised. She knew who he was. His reputation among the Vex was well established. He had destroyed 17 of their battle cruisers, liberated 6 occupied worlds, and personally killed 3 of her royal cousins in single combat. "I have some questions about your invasion fleet's movement patterns in the Titan sector," he began. Queen Lyra stood gracefully, all 4 arms moving in perfect coordination. She was taller than most humans, nearly 7 feet, with an elegant bearing that somehow made the prison uniform look regal. She walked to the barrier, stopping just inches from the crackling energy field. "You are not what I expected," she said, ignoring his question entirely. "What did you expect?" "A monster." Her violet eyes searched his face. "The stories my people tell about the human who single-handedly turned the tide at Kepler Station. The warrior who somehow survived the massacre at New Geneva. The man who cost my empire more resources than any individual in recorded history." Jake remained silent, letting her speak. "But you are just a man," she continued. "Tired, scarred, carrying the weight of too many battles." "We all carry our burdens," Jake replied. "Some of us just handle them better than others." Something shifted in Queen Lyra's expression. Her head tilted further, and one of her secondary arms rose to touch the barrier. The energy field sparked where her fingers made contact. "Kepler Station," she said slowly. 7 years ago." Jake's jaw tightened. He had hoped she wouldn't make that connection. "You were there," she continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Not as a soldier, before the war." The memory came flooding back, despite his efforts to suppress it. Kepler Station had been a neutral trading post, one of the few places where humans and Vex could interact peacefully. He had been there on shore leave, trying to forget the horrors of the previous campaign. "The supply depot explosion," Queen Lyra said, her 4 eyes now locked onto his. "Section C7. I was trapped under the debris." Jake closed his eyes, remembering that day. The accident had been massive, a cascade failure in the station's power grid that caused a fuel storage unit to detonate. He had been in a nearby cantina when the blast threw everyone to the floor. "You pulled me out," she whispered. "A Vex. Civilian. You didn't know who I was." You just saw someone who needed help. He remembered now. The blue-skinned woman trapped under a collapsed beam, her breathing labored, her forearms limp and broken. He had used an emergency cutting torch to free her, and carried her to the medical bay despite the protests of other humans who demanded he leave her to die. You stayed with me, Queen Lyra continued, her voice growing softer, while the doctors worked. You held my hand and told me everything would be fine. You gave me your ration pack because the medical bay had no food suitable for my species. Jake opened his eyes. You never said anything. I was in shock. Pain medication. I barely spoke your language then. She pressed both primary hands against the barrier now. I tried to find you afterward, to thank you. But you had shipped out with your unit. The war started 3 months later, Jake said quietly. Because of choices my father made. Because of pride and fear, and the belief that coexistence was impossible. Queen Lyra's voice carried profound sadness. I became queen 2 years after that. I inherited his war, his hatred, his certainty that your species was our enemy. Jake stepped closer to the barrier. And now? Now I discover that the human who showed me the greatest kindness I had ever experienced from an alien species is the same one who has cost my people so much. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. The irony is almost poetic. I never wanted this war, Jake said. None of us did, but you fought it brilliantly. Every victory, every tactical innovation, every impossible rescue mission that saved human colonies, I studied them all. I told myself I was learning to counter your strategies, but I think I was trying to understand how the same person who saved my life could become my greatest enemy. They stood in silence for several moments, separated by the crackling energy barrier that might as well have been an entire galaxy. What happens now? Queen Lyra asked. Jake looked at her, really looked, not at the enemy commander who had ordered the deaths of millions, but at the person he had once carried to safety, the one who had thanked him in broken English and tried to give him a family heirloom as payment, which he had gently refused. Now we try to end this war, he said, both of us. Queen Lyra smiled, the first genuine expression of happiness he had seen from her. The human who saved a stranger's life wants to save both our species. Someone has to try. She nodded slowly. Then let us begin, Captain Morrison. Let us see if the kindness that existed before this war can somehow survive to build the peace that comes after. Jake reached toward the barrier controls, his hand hovering over the deactivation switch. Two people who had once helped each other were about to try saving everyone else. Together, he said. Together, Queen Lyra agreed.